No good here.
But that is interesting, right? The evolution orbs have classically been so important for Roach for those reasons of getting the 0 drops and getting that special effect. We'll see if that plays out. Look to the mid game, BestMarmotte versus Baad, and it looks like they're going to avoid the forest match for now. So it's going to be Rune versus Dragon, guys. Take it away.
This one's interesting, Mofu. I know we've been talking about this a couple times in the last few weeks here, but we've noticed that D-Shift actually is starting to pull ahead of Dragon in most cases, unless they can get to their combo immediately, and then it just flip-flops. Do you think anything's changed? Do you think it's much the same?
That's really hard for me to call, because I feel like the main thing that has made D-Shift so commanding lately is both that it's become a lot faster about getting to the combo, and that it's found better matchups against previously difficult matchups like aggro with cards like Chimera, like how BestMarmotte is opening here. But as for Dragon, cards that help swing back tempo like Chimera aren't really that helpful. Dragon tends to just shrug that off. But if you can open the combo and get to it quickly, then that's where you can tend to try to keep up pace and take Dragon out before they get enough damage in.
That makes sense. And that's kind of why I said it's like all combo today, because I don't even feel like Dragon is a control deck anymore. It can play control, but I think it's just a full-on combo deck now. You just try to ramp as fast as you possibly can. If you're playing Fortes, stick a couple Fortes in the mid game, and then end game, you're just Erding, Arietting, Queen of the Dread Sea, Genesis Dragon, whatever your finisher is, and you just try to do as fast as possible.
Yeah, and something I find interesting about that too is part of the combo style gameplay that you mentioned that Dragon's headed towards is actually that they don't have 20 exact damage in that Queen of the Dread Sea combo in the late game.
Right.
I remember people used to play like Ariet, and that would bring you up to like 18 by evolving Genesis Dragon. I see everyone today who's brought this has replaced it with Erd, which with an evolve point, actually I think brings that down to about a range of 16 with an evolve point, meaning this deck has to find at least 2 to 4 damage before it actually gets to that point where it can slam down its combo, which could be difficult against D-Shift.
That's true. I'm sure we'll see a few Ariets today, but yeah, a lot of players definitely switching for the Erd, probably just because of consistency with Ayala. It just means that you can ramp faster if you need to, and it's not just stuck in your hand doing nothing until the combo. So I like them both. I like a little bit of a mixture, but I can see swinging one way or another. Absolutely.
Though I've always found it difficult to really call this matchup, just because it's hard to really completely track the progress both players have made on getting to where they just like have that lethal threat on their opponent. But D-Shift, it can be a bit easier because you can just track at what point can they actually play it. Have they drawn a giant Chimera yet? When it comes to Dragon, it's like, how is he going to get that like little poke of about 4 or more damage this game?
Well, public enemy number 1, the card that we were talking about before the cast, Ayala. Ayala is probably like the, I want to say it's a really weird piece of glue in the deck, right? Like it's very unassuming, 3-play point 2/2, but generally speaking, because people don't want to kill her, she can net that 2 to 4 extra damage in a game that you wouldn't normally otherwise be able to get. And I find that very interesting because it's a card that you wouldn't think is the damage dealer of the deck, but I feel like it's the linchpin of the early and mid game. And when you don't draw it, it's much harder, like we see in this game where BestMarmotte's still at 20.
Yeah, actually every single time I lose this matchup from the D-Shift perspective, it's because there were Ayalas that I couldn't do anything about. The card, and I think probably the most unfortunate thing about it in this matchup, even though Baad hasn't opened it, is it's immune to Kaleidoscopic Glow. So you have to give your opponent the ramp, or you give them the damage for the combo later on.
Right. That's absolutely correct. And it looks like, from what we can see, Baad is on her way. She's got pretty much an entire combo plus a Forte for next turn. And now it's on BestMarmotte to just see if he can get there. I mean, he's definitely got all the pieces he needs. It's just, can he do them all in time?
At least he can get a bit of value on the Chimera, and I think the hardest thing about D-Shift's position in this matchup is when it does find time for tempo swings, like I mentioned earlier, like a Chimera here, it doesn't really translate to much threat on Baad. Dragon is so full of healing and ways to deal with board that she can really just kind of shrug the situation off, whereas maybe any other deck like aggro would have to stop and actually deal with this sudden 4/4 body.
Right. That's absolutely correct. And like you said, I mean, as far as ignoring goes, I feel like Baad could just play a Forte right now and just not care about this Chimera at all. Get the 7 damage in, still has an Evo point left, can still push to the late game. However, that does stop her from ramping. And actually, she can actually set up this turn to do a Fervor, so that next turn she's on 9, then play the Forte, and maybe a removal option, and then 10 just close out the game. So this could go either way, a Fervor or a Forte this turn, I think.
Realistically, with only the way a lot of players tend to sometimes count their opponent's progress on D-Shift is the approximate shadows their opponent has. So if he's played 8 spells, then she could count, one of them was Sorcery Cache, I think. Then D-Shift goes down to about 10 or 9. That means that this Chimera isn't going to threaten lethal by any means. It's still very far out of the range for that. No Magic Owls played. So as you said, she could just do this, just completely ignore it, leave it on the board, and just set up her damage for the next few turns.
Yeah, and draws a Staircase so that she doesn't overdraw. It's a nice little perfect draw there. Uses the Breath, of course, before the Fervor, so she didn't overdraw in the first place. So I think this is a nice little roundabout way of plays here. Oh, okay, keeps the Staircase. Interesting.
Huh. Why do you think that she kept the Staircase there, if that's the case? The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is, if a player keeps Staircase, they probably want to pop it and search something, but her hand already looks loaded to me.
Yeah, she's got everything she needs. I don't know if she's ever really going to find the time to play it for 5 either, so maybe just, you know what, she's just like, I don't need it, I don't care, I got everything already.
Actually, after asking that question, I came up with the answer. She's just playing around Kaleidoscopic Glow, and now I respect that very much.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You know what? And seeing that BestMarmotte has 3 Kaleidoscopic Glows in hand is a great choice. Slowing him down immensely. All those Wind Blasts do nothing, all those Kaleidoscopic Glows do nothing, so basically just saying, you can attack me, but that's about it.
But now she has moved on into a pretty peculiar situation. The Forte can go face here, Actually, the Evolve made this very tricky. Forte going face, I think, has been eliminated, actually, as opposed to what I was about to say, just because the Breath follow-up doesn't actually get rid of its evolved body anymore. So this might actually slow down Baad to the point where she does have to stop and deal with it.
Which is kind of unfortunate, which means that BestMarmotte actually gets a few extra turns out of that. Instead of dying in 2, it might be 3, it might be 4, depending on what the play is this turn.
In addition, Giant Chimera, I think, was only just drawn, I think, 1 or 2 turns ago. So it's not going to have many spell boosts. It doesn't mean Marmotte has lethal just yet, but it does mean Baad has to stop for a second. Which also means that the OTK is not going to be ready in the next, it's kind of funny to call it an OTK, because usually Dreadsea and Dragon is just simply going to be enough. But especially when Urd is the main activator for it, or the enabler for it, it's just, if she can't find one method of just getting that damage in yet, then she's in this situation where it's her time left in the game is already ticking down, and she can't really progress her game plan much.
Oh, wow. Looks like she's going to go for it anyway.
I guess evolving it face means that she is daring Marmotte to have it. Unfortunately, we know that he does. Saying that if she... Yeah, I think she's just claiming, if you don't have it now, then I'm just going to set up my lethal for next turn. She probably feels that she doesn't actually have a solid way to get that damage in later, like Sybil now, trade, be safe, and then hit face, and then combo.
I don't mind this line of play from Baad. It might seem like we know, that the game's just over because of hand, like, Baad, why did you do this? But in Baad's shoes, I think the way you explained it is perfectly right. Do I really want to sit around for a couple extra turns and not kill them, or do I want to just take my chance now and hope they don't have the D-shift? And, that's one of those coin flippy things, I did it. I took the chance. It backfired on me, but I think she feels okay with that choice.
I agree with it a lot, because, their opponent's playing D-Shift. You've seen them get quite a few spell boosts already. Even if you don't know what's exactly in their hand, your decision is really, do I give them another turn and do my combo another turn after that? Or do I stake it all on, you bricked, and I didn't, so I'm going to go as early as I can into my combo. Unfortunate it worked out that way.
Yeah, I agree. And heads up play by BestMarmotte on evoing the Chimera there to actually put Baad in a bad position where Breath of the Salamander couldn't just kill it by itself. So really good play from both players that last game. I like that.
Right. I wanted to actually add to that. It was a beautiful evolve on the Chimera. It gets it out of the range of most of Dragon's removal, at least that it can just feel free to spend. He knew that she didn't want to spend a enhanced Breath of the Salamander on it, so both dodges removal and set up his own lethal with D-Shift the next turn.
So, getting into this matchup, this is interesting because in my mind, OTK Roach has always had a slight edge in the Dragon matchup, but because of the combo nature of Dragon now being able to go off on similar turns as Forest, I'm not really sure anymore. I think this just comes down to how good the draws are.
Yeah, I was about to mention that my experience with this in the past is that Forest gets this matchup every single time, but in the past, Dragon did not also have 16 damage on what could potentially just be about like turn 6 or 7.
Right, exactly. So I think this, in my mind, is like the actual OTK Roach mirror if we don't get to see it. This is basically who can accumulate lethal the fastest and who can get the early poke damage in.
So it seems like things are going well so far in Baad's position anyways. Has already managed to ramp quite a bit and is on the play, so she's rapidly accelerating towards her game plan. Whereas Marmotte has the beginning of a setup with Elven Princess Mage next turn, but I like this Dragoon Scyther a lot because it denies a good trade off of her.
That's right. Elven Princess Mage, if Marmotte wants to use it, will have to sacrifice itself or just leave it in play, and basically the same end result if Baad wants to remove the Elven Princess Mage. Or an option for an extra 2 damage. So yeah, playing the Scyther there really, really good. Especially against Forest, what you talked about before the match, their Evo turns. Elven Princess Mages, their Finas, those turns are big stop turns. If you can navigate those turns very well, it makes it so that Forest has to do a lot of different things than it wants to do on those turns.
That said, I think that's a really interesting turn for Marmotte there is instead of developing that evolve turn, he instead just chooses to develop and look for more pieces. So he's actually been just, or Baad's line of play actually just completely swerved him away from that. And he's going to probably try in the next few turns to look for another way to reach it, which in turn gives Baad a lot more time to ramp towards her own win condition.
Right. Now, if you're Baad, do you trade here or do you go face? What are you thinking?
I think I absolutely go face here. In fact, I would dare say she evolves face. Right. Right. That is to say, yeah, all she needs is an Erd right now, and she already off of that hit alone has a guaranteed setup for lethal once she hits 10 play points.
That's true. And then this will be on BestMarmotte if he's slow enough to the combo. It looks like he's pretty close, though. He's got the Elven Princess Mage. He's got all of his roaches. Doesn't even really need a bounce at this point, just cheap spells. And he's got the Spring Green protections, which can help. Ooh.
Which is interesting. I was about to say, I don't even imagine he trades here. But at this point, probably doesn't want to take any more damage, though. What's probably going to be very scary and hanging upon Marmotte's mind here is that he's already been put into lethal range for once Baad gets the play points.
Right, and I think BestMarmotte feels that. That's why we see the Roach coming down for additional poke. Now, it's interesting to me that he uses one of the Roaches here. He doesn't have a bounce effect in his hand. He does have the Ancient Elf, but not a cheap one like an Airbound Barrage or a Nature's Guidance to actually full combo with 2 Roaches. So giving one up could be very telling of him feeling very pressured right now.
Right. At the same time, it could even also highlight that he feels he's not going to have the actual time to set up any kind of 3-Roach combo later. He says, I only need 2. That's going to be enough. Or at least it has to be enough for me later.
Yeah, now it's a have to. And it's fine against these Dragon decks now because generally speaking, you only need 2 with a full combo in the later turns, but you might not get to those later turns. So throwing the Roach might have given away a turn that he could have pressed for a lethal, maybe next turn, right before Baad gets to 10. But with only 2 Roaches and without a bounce, it's going to be a lot harder at this point.
Meanwhile, it seems like if he's been playing for anything this entire game, I think that Roach tells us he just wanted to get the poke in because he's never going to get the chance again, but he still doesn't have the pieces for the combo after that. Whereas Baad, at this point, I think, has established enough dominance of the board with Dragoon Scythers alone, actually. They're doing so much to just lock out Marmotte's options that she can just get in enough damage to not need Erd. I think coming up soon, she can actually just go Dread Sea into Genesis Zeus, and that being 12 is enough if Ayala were to survive here.
That's true. And even if it's not enough, putting a Zeus in play on a combo turn for Roach makes it very hard to get around. Usually you have to stop for a turn, Dance of Death it, and then combo off the next turn, but there isn't going to be that kind of time.
I've got to take a break.
Oh, onto the side of that, did you see how difficult that decision was for Marmotte to make of,
oh yeah,
do I give up my entire body and get rid of Dragoon Scyther, or do I give Baad 10 play points for her combo to get 4 damage off the board?
Right. And this turn is just disgusting. Playing a Zeus and a Genesis Dragon alongside of a 7/7 in a single turn, we're talking about 30 play points worth of value in a single turn.
That. So Cassiopeia would need like a 30 card hand to actually clear all of this.
Yeah. I think Cassiopeia is a little overwhelmed at the moment. Dragons and gods and queens, I don't know if I can do it.
Well, she's gonna try. Got a little bit of chip damage in there.
I lost.
And that'll be the game. So now we get to see the much anticipated Roach versus Roach mirror.
Something I actually find really funny about that is I noticed something kind of peculiar about Marmotte's list is a card I don't see many people use. He drew it that turn, and it's in like the best situation I think you could even really find it with Pixie Mischief. If a person runs Pixie Mischief, it's probably with the intention to remove or steal tempo away from someone for playing something that's a huge commitment like Zeus or otherwise. But in that case, where Baad has already just gone off of their combo, suddenly a class you'd think might be a bit vulnerable to it, it just completely shrugs it off. It's just not nearly enough.
Oh, you want to let me play my Zeus again? You got it. You got it. Now, I will say that Pixie Mischief, I feel, is much better than people are giving it credit for, especially right now because of the way the tempo-oriented games go. Especially because you have cards like Spring Gearing Protection, Wood of Brambles, just so many cards to combo with it, and to gain tempo just to get an extra turn or two in the mid-game or the early game. I think that people only run one of it, and not everybody runs one copy of it anymore. A lot of lists don't even run it anymore, and I feel like that number should be at least 2, maybe even 3 in some circumstances. I'm really high on that card right now, but can't speak for everyone.
It's a really interesting card if you also consider that, I mean, now that we're actually talking about it, it's hitting me that both of these decks have such an absurd amount of bounce in them, carrying both Airbound Barrage as a playset of 3, Nature's Guidance as a playset of 3, and both of them also run 3 Ancient Elves. It's just that Marmotte goes above and beyond to also include 2 copies of Pixie Mischief.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. More tempo is great. I mean, think about all the decks that you're really scared about, right? Like, Atomy could beat you before you have time to do anything, and we saw what Pixie Mischief can do against that card. Especially, it basically just destroys the game. It's just really good against every big tempo play that decks have. You know what I mean? Like, even against D-Ship, bouncing a Chimera might seem really bad, but it costs 9 again when it bounces to their hand, or, you know, anything, just to stop any kind of tempo on whatever turn. Bouncing cards is great, and for 2 play points, I think it's really good.
If anything, I think Pixie Mischief was like a really, really interesting card, an answer Forest had to a lot of things that a lot of people didn't explore. And unfortunately, I think it's going out. I don't think it's a basic card when the rotations happen, but at the very least, we do get to see Marmotte Shrine represented here.
That's true. All right, so now we have the Battle of the Brambles. Of course, for those of you who are new to Wood of Brambles, if it is your turn, you are the active player, your clashes go off first. So being the person who can attack with it on their turn has advantage, and I think that is in Baad's favor at the moment.
Absolutely. In fact, I think Marmotte was in a really tough position there on what he even does to this board, because especially if your board is empty and your opponent has a Wood of Brambles that's just been ticking, as you can see here how it works, no matter how protected your own fairies are, the best he can do is play 3 and give up 2 of them, accepting that he'll at least have 1 left on board afterwards.
Right. Now, it's interesting to play, I mean, you do it because it's defense, right? You play those 2 fairies because you don't want to take the 2 damage. But now he's gotten rid of 1-cost cards in his hand. He's only got the 1 fairy left and a Nature's Guidance, which might make it a little bit harder in the next couple turns if he wants to get that Tia down, or if he wants to do anything in multiples on his turn. So he gave up a lot of advantage for his life points there, I think.
Yeah, and in addition to that, trading here becomes no easier. Another very, very strong quality of Wood of Brambles is just the nature of a countdown amulet is that it doesn't tick until your turn comes. So even after its active duration has ended for that player, there's still one more turn where your opponent is protected by it. So this fairy still only has one option of attack. But I find it really interesting, along with what you said as well. He threw away all of his one costs, but he doesn't have a backup plan. He doesn't have an Elven Princess Mage or a Fina or anything like that to restore that.
That's right, and he elected not to play the fairy in hand now. I believe that's just so he can save it for combo turns, but now it means that he's giving up board position. So it's kind of like this tug of war that we're seeing for board, and I think BestMarmotte isn't doing necessarily the wrong thing. It's more just, I feel like he's giving up the board while also giving up card advantage over the course of a couple turns. It might not matter in the end game because, of course, at the very heart of this matchup, it's who can combo faster, but these little incremental damage pieces in the mid game really matter for Roach damage.
Actually reaching that increment of 20 damage off of Roach is a really difficult task, and I think a lot of people sometimes underestimate it. As I think the most common intervals of damage for Roach are about 14 or otherwise, which Marmotte is approaching now. But something I find really interesting with how this game is going out is both of us reacted to Rainu's question like on impulse when he asked, do you go first or second? Just immediately. Second, obviously. Elven Princess Mage, need more evolves. But there's something I didn't consider because it's relatively new. If you go first, and Baad has demonstrated this, even if both of you open Wood of Brambles, you're the one who gets the last laugh on it.
That's true. That's true. Wood of Brambles does a lot of work if you're on the play. So that is kind of like the extra wild card in this matchup. If you're on the play and you get Wood of Brambles, you have a slight advantage in the early game. Absolutely.
You can see now it's actually dismantling Marmotte's evolve point advantage where he's on the draw, because he's lost so much tempo off of it, to the point that it even looks like he's still recovering beyond 2 evolve points trying to get it back, that I think Baad is just going to run away with this one.
I think so as well. Baad already has 2 Roaches in hand. She has an Angelic Snipe for extra combo damage, which I love. Angelic Snipe, I would never leave home without it when I'm playing OTK Roach, but I see a lot of players like not to run that card as well. She doesn't have a bounce at the moment, but she does have all this damage in play already that she's dealing.
Right, and it's not as though Forest really has a wealth of options for tempo swinging. Cassiopeia probably the best of them, though.
And this is the swing turn. So how much damage can she do out of hand at the moment? She can cast 4, 5, 6, 7. So she can cast 3. So that's 4, 5, 9, 10 damage this turn. So not quite lethal.
There's no bounce in hand, which is kind of unfortunate. Or at least not that I'm squinting at. But the 2/0 cost fairies and the Angelic Snipe definitely threaten it soon.
Oh, actually, I miscounted. I forgot that she had that many. So she can play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is 11, 12 damage. She has 12 damage this turn, so I miscounted. So she's actually almost there. But what that does mean is that Dance of Death can come down right now and pretty much just set up for a guaranteed lethal next turn.
Though Marmotte can respond to it by setting up Aaron afterwards, and then left without Dance of Death. I guess as we mentioned before the game, the role that Aaron really plays in this matchup is if Marmotte's that behind here, he did manage to get a tempo swing, so he's not outright dying right now. But because he has Aaron, he still gets just a little bit more time. Now it comes down to a choice of whether he wants to Aaron or commit his hand into a Tia here, but I imagine Aaron's a lot more reasonable of a way to recover some time, as opposed to dumping his Roach-related resources.
Well, because he just drew an Ancient Elf, I think that Tia just became an actual option. And I think that's what Marmotte's considering right now. It gets to put up a ward, he gets to fill up the board, and if things go awry, he can scoop it all back up and maybe even replay that Tia on a following turn. So I actually really like this. This will set up, like, when you're playing in this mirror and you're behind, it's wards every single turn until you can't do it anymore. So this will set up this play. If Baad doesn't deal with the Crystalia Aaron, then Ancient Elf can come down as another ward, and then Tia can come down on the following turn from the ward, and then you have Aaron, and then you just do this end game of non-stop wards, and I really like it.
I actually think Marmotte's actually in a perfectly fine position. He's gonna probably start throwing this back to the good old classic way Forest used to play, where it just recycles Tia infinitely. He has an Ancient Elf to do it first. Well, that's probably not this turn. if he's willing to give up a Nature's Guidance.
Ooh, interesting. I didn't expect this play. Because
Now,
this
how
again
does that-
puts Crystallia Aaron in trouble. She can be removed. I think Baad almost, I wouldn't call it a misplay, but overlooking the fact that Tia could come back to hand. You never really want that to happen, and now Marmotte's saying, you know what? Deal with her. I'm going to give you one more chance.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, even pre-evolving the Aaron, I think that is definitely smelling out some fear from Marmot of large combo happening anytime soon. But it does leave Tia herself pretty vulnerable if Baad is willing to, well, I suppose Sylvan Justice is a pretty straightforward way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But how does she deal with the 6/8?
That's tough. Like, the pre-evo here is basically saying, you know what, Baad? You don't have another Dance of Death. I dare you. Okay? And she doesn't, which makes it really hard to deal with. So you're at least going to have to get rid of a Roach here, I think. So if you could do Sylvan Justice, that's 1. You can play Angelic Snipe, that's 2. And then you don't really want to play your fairies is the problem. You start playing those fairies, it's rough. But she does have a fairy circle. I'm gonna let her figure this one out. There's a lot of math in there. I'm 100% positive she can deal with this, Aaron. It just depends on how many resources she wants to give up to do it.
Right. I think she has enough of an abundance where she can do it, though I might try to find a way to throw in maybe the Sylvan Justice, the fairy from it, maybe activate the fairy circle and just continue to work up until Roach is able to deal the remainder of maybe 5, maybe give up the Angelic Snipe here. But what makes this turn really tricky, I think, is that she needs to get rid of this Tia as well, or at least seeing Marmot's hand tells us that.
The one thing that BestMarmotte did present here, like I said, with playing the Aaron, it unfortunately means that there isn't going to be this onslaught of wards anymore. He essentially put out 2 to be killed this turn. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like she's going for lethal.
She's 1 off if that's the case.
Ooh. She's putting the pressure on, though. Okay. I didn't expect this play.
That's so in. I mean, she doesn't have a follow-up to that. You see her hand. It's a vanilla 3/4 at this point, which is one of the unfortunate parts of Elven Princess Mage. And then it's just fairies. Even if she had an evolve, it would still just be fairies. So she's just looking to grind out 1 more hit. But she did leave a Tia alive against the class of returning followers to hand.
And just in case, BestMarmotte did draw another Tia. So even if that Tia was dealt with, he would have had another one in time. And I think this game is going to get progressively rougher for Baad unless she can draw an Angelic Snipe. Angelic Snipe is a lethal card at the moment.
So, okay, there are 3 Angelic Snipes in Baad's deck. There is also another Dance of Death. So we're constantly, we're looking for just 3 bombs right now. The Roaches are all used up. They're basically time bombs at this point. There's 3 in the deck. If she draws 1, it's over.
Ooh. It's every card now. It's just like, oh my goodness. But Baad only has this draw, maybe next draw, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that she's dead this following turn. I mean, there's 11 staring at her on the board. There's 2 Roaches and a Nature's Guidance in hand with a Fairy Circle. I'm pretty sure she's dead. Yeah,
I think that's actually it, because this deck is one of those decks that does not have any alternative to Goblin Mage. There's no Elfchild May, nothing like that. It only pulls Roach. Seeing all 3, it's just a 2/2 now. So her hand is just vanillas and fairies. She can't deal with any bodies, and Marmot just swings face and just spends his own Roaches.
So you know what? Marmot doing that pre-evo on the Aaron scared Baad enough to where she's like, I don't have any more time. I need to get him to 1 now, and played right into BestMarmotte's hand of just having plenty of wards and then just pushing for lethal leisurely.
To be honest, I don't even think Marmot needs the Roaches at this point. I think, like, his deck has already done such a good job of just staying defensive that he could even, assuming he didn't have them or no burst from hand, I think he could just continue to play out this just with the resources of bouncing and playing wards, and then assuming Baad doesn't top deck that miracle of 1 damage.
But see, you can't ever give him a card, Mofu. You know this. I know you know this. Never give your opponent a card ever.
Right.
Yeah. 1 card could mean doom. Always. Don't let him have it. I don't think BestMarmotte's going to allow it.
Absolutely. The Roaches are definitely in this turn. Even with limited board space, that's still a very, very clear path for him with the Roach Bounce, Roach. It's still excessively over lethal. But yeah,
right.
as we were talking about this matchup before, I think something we missed, or at least what was demonstrated here, is the wards in each deck are such an important part of the whole matchup.
Best
Absolutely.
Marmotte.
BestMarmotte. I'm gonna give BestMarmotte a clap. Getting on the board.
It was
Give
actually
our man some love.
It was definitely a really good line of play. Now there were a few things that happened in there. I think